Hello everyone, welcome to episode 5 of Ethical Dilemmas as we further dive into another spoke in the wheel of patient autonomy. Today, we confront one of the most profound and controversial questions in modern ethics. Should patients have the right to choose when and how they die? This issue strikes at the heart of human dignity, autonomy, and the very essence of suffering. With us today, we have a distinguished panel: Dr. Marcus Fields, a renowned bioethicist, Dr. Ben Cameron, a leading palliative and hospice physician, and Mrs. Jones, who tragically witnessed her husband's suffering from Huntington's disease. This debate will not be easy, and it will not be comfortable. But it is necessary. Dr. Fields, let's start with you. From an ethical perspective, what are the implications of allowing patients to choose when and how they die?
This is a deeply complex issue. On one hand, we have the principle of autonomy, each individual's right to self-determination, to make decisions about their own life and death. On the other hand, we must consider the sanctity of life, the potential for abuse, and the role of suffering. Suffering, as we've discussed in previous episodes, especially in the context of religious beliefs, has historically been seen as something to endure. Yet modern medicine offers ways to alleviate it. But should we? And if so, to what extent?
A difficult balance. Dr. Cameron, from a medical standpoint, how do you see this issue, particularly in the context of palliative and hospice care?
As a palliative care physician, my goal is to alleviate suffering and enhance the quality of life for those with serious illnesses. However, when a patient reaches a point where they feel their life has no quality, and all that remains is pain, whether physical, emotional, or spiritual, we're faced with a harrowing dilemma. Hospice can do much to ease this transition, but there are limits. We need to ask ourselves, when is enough enough? And who gets to decide?
Thank you, Dr. Cameron. Now, I'd like to introduce Mrs. Jones. Her experience is one that deeply personalizes this debate. Mrs. Jones, I know this is incredibly difficult to discuss, and we are all grateful for your courage in sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me here today, and for the empathy everyone has shown me since I arrived. It means a great deal to me.
We appreciate you being here, Mrs. Jones. Your voice is so important in this conversation, and we're here to listen.
I watched my husband deteriorate for years. Huntington's disease took everything from him: his mind, his body, his dignity. He was in constant pain, unable to move, unable to speak. He begged me to help him end his life. But I couldn't. I prayed so hard for God to take him quickly, but I couldn't bring myself to take his life and cause an immediate end. There was no hospice care available in our area to help us. He suffered until the very end, and I had to helplessly watch him suffer.
I'm so sorry, Mrs. Jones. Your story is heartbreaking and raises crucial points. Dr. Fields, what do you say to those who argue that suffering like Mrs. Jones's husband should give patients the right to choose their end?
Suffering like this forces us to confront our own humanity. We must consider whether prolonging life in such conditions is ethical, or if it is a form of cruelty. But we also must be wary of the slippery slope. How do we ensure that such decisions are truly voluntary, free of coercion, and in the patient's best interest?
That's where palliative care comes in, but it must be available to everyone, everywhere. Mrs. Jones's story highlights a systemic failure. Had hospice been available, her husband's suffering could have been significantly alleviated, even if his life couldn't be extended with quality.
But hospice wouldn't have stopped his suffering completely. He wanted to die, to be free from the pain. He knew there was no cure, no hope. Why couldn't he have that choice?
Dr. Cameron, Mrs. Jones raises a crucial point. What about those cases where even the best palliative care can't eliminate suffering? Shouldn't patients have the right to say when enough is enough?
There are limits to what medicine can do, and we must respect the wishes of our patients. But we must also ensure that every other option has been explored, that they have been given every support, every resource to manage their pain and make an informed decision.
This brings us to a philosophical crossroads. Is life inherently valuable, no matter the quality? Or is the value of life determined by the quality of that life? And who is best positioned to make that determination? the patient, their family, or society?
Is there ever a point where extending life becomes unethical?
If we extend life at the cost of unremitting suffering, are we respecting the dignity of that person? Or are we imposing our own values on them? These are questions that challenge the very core of our medical and ethical frameworks. But we also must consider the slippery slope of terminating life. If we allow for the right to choose when and how to die, how do we prevent this from leading to hasty decisions or abuses, where the pressure to end life might come from external factors rather than the individual's true wishes?
You're right, Dr. Fields. The concern about a slippery slope is valid, but it's also crucial to remember that hospice care is designed to manage suffering effectively while respecting the natural course of life. Hospice can provide substantial relief from pain and distress, ensuring that patients' remaining time is as comfortable and dignified as possible. For patients like Mrs. Jones's husband, hospice care could have helped alleviate much of the suffering he endured. Additionally, hospice provides vital support for caregivers, offering guidance and respite to help them cope with the emotional and practical challenges of caregiving. This support can be crucial in finding closure and ensuring that both patients and their families experience a compassionate end-of-life process. Mrs. Jones, I want to acknowledge how incredibly difficult this has been for you. We strive to improve access to hospice care precisely to prevent the kind of suffering you experienced.
Thank you, Dr. Cameron. It means so much to hear that there are ways to prevent what my husband and I went through. I only wish we had these options available to us earlier.
Mrs. Jones, your experience highlights a critical gap in our healthcare system. Your pain and your husband's suffering are deeply moving, and they underscore the urgent need for better access to compassionate care. We are truly sorry for what you went through.
Thank you. I just hope that sharing our story can help others avoid the pain we endured.
Dr. Cameron, we would be grateful to have you back to explore more about palliative care and hospice services in greater detail, and how we can better support patients and families in similar situations.
I'd be glad to return and continue this important discussion. There is so much more to cover about improving palliative care and ensuring that every patient has access to the support they need.
It has also been a pleasure to have Dr. Fields with us once again. Your insights have been invaluable, and we look forward to continuing this important discussion in future episodes.
Thank you. It's been a privilege to engage in this dialogue with you and Dr. Cameron. Thank you, Mrs. Jones, for sharing your experience. The issues we've explored today are deeply significant and complex, and continuing this conversation is crucial for advancing our understanding and practices. I look forward to further discussions and hope we can continue to delve into these challenging topics together. Thank you for having me back.
Thank you all for your contributions today. Today's discussion leaves us with more questions than answers. Should patients have the right to choose when and how they die? Or should society set the boundaries to protect life at all costs? We want to hear from you. What do you think? How do we balance autonomy, dignity, and the sanctity of life? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow for more thought-provoking discussions. And remember, the essence of ethical dilemmas lies not in finding easy answers, but in asking the right questions. Let's continue the conversation in the comments section.